Hi guys, I'm here with Matt Jobe, aka Prufrock on the Fortnite community. He has been playing for quite a while now, and we just wanted to learn a little bit more about what the actual Fortnite game is and what drew him to it. So I guess the first question is, where did the name Prufrock come from?
The name Prufrock came from a poem by T.S. Eliot called The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, about a fictional character that's just been one of my favorite poems for a long time.
So then, what actually drew you to playing Fortnite versus any other game?
So Fortnite is a game that, the two things I like about it is that it's got a very high skill ceiling, which means that it's very hard to get very good at it, and you can get to a point where you're good enough at that game to beat people who are good at the game consistently. Like, it's not random. The skill ceiling is very high. The other thing I like about it is that there's no skill-based matchmaking, so a lot of competitive games, they match you with other players who are also good at the game. If you're good at the game, or if you're bad at the game, it matches you with other players who are bad at the game to kind of inflate or decrease your win rate. So it's like, if I'm really good at the game, it's going to match me against other players who are really good at the game, and I'm still only going to win half my games. When if I was just matched against a random other player, I would win most of my games, which is a better representation of my skill level. So I like that a lot. I like running into random players and just being better than the community and not just losing to really good players over and over again.
When did you actually start playing Fortnite? Was it before or after it became the biggest game in the area?
So I actually owned Fortnite before the Battle Royale even came out. There's a player versus environment version of it called Save the World, which is you and 3 other people doing a tower defense games against waves of zombies coming in. There's no player versus player element to it at all. The Battle Royale came out after that, and I kind of hopped in it because it was free to play, and I kind of enjoyed it, but it wasn't really until, the game's been out about a year now, and it wasn't until about 6 months ago that I started to see, how high the skill ceiling could be and how competitive of a game Fortnite was, and that's when I really started to get into it.
Oh. So then, one of my last questions would be, I know you play on PC, but a lot of other people prefer consoles like the Xbox and PS4. Why is it that you're drawn more towards the PC side of things?
Well, first of all, I've always just been a PC gamer. PCs themselves have higher specs on the actual computers, so they can run the game with more frames, better quality. The other thing about it is that I can use a mouse and a keyboard versus a controller, which raises the potential skill ceiling again. Whenever you're aiming, because it's a shooter, so you have to use a cursor to aim at somebody. On a controller, you're limited to just using your thumb on a little thumbstick and trying to aim that way. While when I'm using a mouse, I can use my whole arm and hand and wrist and everything. So I have a lot more control over my aim. And then the other thing is, with a keyboard having a bunch more buttons than a controller, I can map the buttons for the building aspects and the other mechanics of the game to any key that I want and do it a lot more fluidly, where the controller has a limited amount of buttons, and there are some things that you actually just can't do on a console or on a controller while compared to using a keyboard and mouse. For instance, you can place a wall and then edit the wall to have a different shape, and on a PC all I have to do to edit it is hit one button and then click my mouse, which I can do instantly. On a console you have to, because they ran out of buttons, you have to use a button that does something else and just hold it for a few seconds in order for it to trigger the actual edit mechanic, which
So it
takes
sounds
a
like
lot
a lot
longer.
longer.
Yeah, it's much worse. If a player on a controller gets in a fight with a player on keyboard and mouse, the average keyboard and mouse player is going to beat the average console player almost every time.
So then, my last question to you would be this. Do you think that it's unfair to match PC players against console players if there is such a big disconnect between keyboard and mouse versus controllers?
It would be, but the thing is that if you're using the controller, if you're on a console, you're only ever matched against PC players if you're in a party with another PC player, because you can play across them with your friends. Like, I can play on a PC with somebody who's on a console. Otherwise, it only matches you against other console players. So you're opting in to that disadvantage.
Okay.
And then at the same time, there are people who just are more comfortable on a controller, even though you are kind of at a disadvantage. People still prefer it just because it's what they use their whole life. And so they opt into getting matched playing on the PC with a controller anyway, so they're willingly going to that disadvantage. It doesn't force that on anybody. That's something players choose. But otherwise, if it wasn't their choice, then yeah, it'd be very unfair.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all enjoyed.